In this lesson, we are going to be looking at how to add and subtract algebraic fractions. So first example, we're going to be looking at these types of questions. So let's add x over 5 plus y over 3. We're going to be applying our skills of adding standard fractions and applying this to algebraic fractions. So before we begin, we know that if we were adding standard fractions, we can only add or subtract if our denominators are the same. So our first step is going to be finding the common denominator. So what is the lowest common multiple of 5 and 3? So if you think of your 5 and your 3 times tables, the lowest common number that is in both of those is 15. So we are going to change each of these fractions to have 15 on the bottom. And our next step is to calculate the numerators. So we need to figure out what numbers are now going to go on top of the fractions. And we're going to multiply this, so we're going to multiply the x by the same number that we have multiplied the 5 by, and the y by the same number we have multiplied the 3 by. So to begin looking at our first fraction, how have we changed that 5 to become 15? Well, we've times it by 3, so whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So because 5 times 3 is 15, we need to times the x by 3 to get 3x on the top of our first fraction. And then how have we changed this 3 to become 15? Well, we've times it by 5, so whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top, giving us 5y. And then once we've got that, because we've got the same denominators, we can just go ahead and add. But because we just add the numerators, so the bottom of our fraction is just going to be 15. Because we're adding algebra terms, we will have 3x plus 5y on the top of our fraction. So we're just adding these two terms on the top, and that is it fully simplified. We can't go any further. Okay, so we can't simplify any further. A common mistake that some people make here is they start crossing out, well, I can cancel that 5 with a 15. But remember, you can only cancel things on the top and the bottom of the fraction if every single thing on the top is being multiplied. But because we've got an addition there, we can't simplify this any further. And we know our skills of collecting like terms. 3x plus 5y, that's that fully simplified, and that's your answer. So using this example to help you, very carefully following all the same steps, can you apply all these steps to trying your own question? So x over 3 add y over 4. Okay, hopefully you managed to do that. Let's go over the answers. So again, we need to find a common denominator because we can't add or subtract fractions with different denominators. So we need to find the lowest common multiple of 3 and 4. And thinking of your 3 and your 4 times table, we will get 12. Okay, now we need to start to calculate our numerators. So we're going to multiply whatever we multiplied the 3 by to get 12, which is 4. We need to do the same to the top. So we need to multiply our x by 4 to get 4x. Then how have we changed this 4 to become 12? Well, we've times it by 3, so whatever we do to the bottom, again, we must do it to the top to get 3y. And when we have that, we can just go ahead and add. And we know we can now add because we have the same denominators. So your answer, the answer you should have is 4x plus 3y all over 12. So well done if you got that. Okay, let's look at a second example. This time we're going to subtract, and we've got 2a over 3 subtract 4b over 7. No matter if it's add or subtract, we just apply the same rules, and just when we get to that final step, we just subtract rather than add. But this time we have a number term in front of our algebraic term. So we're going to find the common denominator because we can only subtract if we've got the same number on the bottom. So the lowest common multiple of 3 and 7. So thinking of your 3 and your 7 times tables, the lowest common multiple is 21. So we're going to have 21 on the bottom of both our fractions. We now need to calculate the numerators. So we're going to multiply this by the same number that you have multiplied the denominator. So how have we changed this 3 to become 21? Well, we've times it by 7. So whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 2a times 7 is 14a. So 2 times 7 is 14, and we've got an a term there. And then on our second fraction, we've times the 7 by 3 to get 21. So whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do it to the top. So 4b times 3 gives us 12b. And now we've got the same denominators, we can go ahead and add them, or subtract them, sorry. Make sure we know what we're doing, adding or subtracting. So we're going to subtract, and we're just going to write it out in one fraction because we can't simplify that any further. 14a subtract 12b over 21, and that is your final answer. So another one for you to try, following all these steps really carefully, but trying your own question. Can you calculate 4a over 3 subtract 3b over 5? So if you pause now. Okay, so hopefully you managed to give this one a go. Let's go through the answer. So we've got different denominators there. We can only subtract if we've got the same. So we need to find the common denominator, which is the lowest common multiple of 3 and 5, and you will get 15. So let's change, finding our numerators, let's change the first fraction first. So how have we changed that 3 to become 15? Well, we've times it by 5, so whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do it to the top. So 4a times 5, you should have 20a. And then we've changed the 5 on our second fraction to become 15 by timesing by 3. Again, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 3b times 3 will give us 9b. And now because we've got the same denominator, we can go ahead and subtract. And you should get 20a subtract 9b over 15. And we can't simplify that any further, and that is our final answer. Okay, I would like you to try these 4 questions. So if you pause the video here and try these 4 questions. Okay, so let's go through the answers. So for the first answer, you should have 9x subtract 5y over 15. And for B, you should have 10p plus 3q over 6. For C, you should have 3s subtract 14t over 8. And for D, 9s add 4t over 12. So well done if you managed most of them, if not all of them, and got them correct. Just highlighting C here. When we're thinking about the lowest common multiple, don't think too hard into it. The common multiple is 8. So if you had 32 on the bottom, you've made it really tricky for yourself because you would then have to simplify later on. But in this case, you can just change this last fraction to have 8 on the bottom by timesing top and bottom by 2. So be careful there. Okay, let's look at moving on a little bit trickier, example 3. So we're going to subtract 4 over x, subtract 3 over y. This time our algebra terms are on the bottom of our fractions. So before, when we were thinking of finding our common denominators, we were thinking about times tables and what is the lowest common multiple. Okay, so find the common denominator. In this case, it won't really help us to think of our times tables, but I tend to think about, well, how can I make these denominators the same? What can I times these 2 denominators by to make them exactly the same? Well, I could times the x by y and the y by x, and our denominator could be xy. So that's what we're going to use. So to change, we now need to calculate our numerators. To change this first fraction, well, like I said, I'm going to times this x by y. So whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do it to the top to get 4y. And then our second fraction, how have I changed this y to become xy? Well, I've times it by x, and whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do it to the top to get 3x. And now we've got the same denominators, so we can go ahead and subtract. So this time we have 4y subtract 3x over xy. And that's that fully simplified. Okay, we can't simplify it any further. At this stage, you really do need to use your skills on simplifying algebraic fractions and make sure there's not any common factors or anything left on the top of our fraction that we could take out and possibly simplify. So in these examples so far, we've not had to simplify at all, but let's just always double check our final solution, our final answer, and make sure that we can't simplify any further. And if it's possible, then go ahead and apply your previous skills of simplifying fractions. Okay, so using this example, again, one for you to try. Let's simplify, calculate 5 over a subtract 2 over b. So if you pause here and give this a go. Okay, let's go through the answers. So we need to find our common denominators, and we were thinking, well, how can we change the denominators a and b to be the same? Well, I can times the a by b and I can times the b by a to get ab on the bottom. So I've times the a by b, which means I need to do the same to the top to get 5b on the top of our first fraction. I've times the b by a, meaning I'll need to times the top by a as well to get 2a. I've got the same denominators, so I can go ahead and write this out as one fraction to get 5b subtract 2a over ab, and we can't simplify that any further. So well done if you got that correct. Okay, example 4. This time we have 5 over 3x add 2 over x. Okay, so we've got the same letters underneath. Again, we're going to find the common denominator, and now I'm thinking, how can we make the denominators the same? Okay, so I've got 3x and I've got x here. How can we make them the same? Well, all I need to do is times this x by 3, and then we'll have 3x on the bottom. So that means because I've only changed this last fraction, the first fraction stays the same. I don't need to change that at all because I've not times that bottom fraction by anything, the denominator by anything. But I have times this x by 3 to get 3x, meaning I'll need to times that 2 by 3 as well to get 6. And because we've got the same denominators, we can go ahead and add them to get 5 plus 6 over 3x. But we know what 5 plus 6 is, we can just go ahead and answer that. So your final answer is 11 over 3x. And again, one for you to try. Can you please solve 7 over 4y, add 1 over y? Following the example closely. Okay, let's go through the answer for this one. So we need to find a common denominator. How can I make both of these denominators the same? So I've got 4y and I've got y here. So I'm going to times this y by 4 to give us 4y on the bottom of both our fractions. Our first fraction is staying the same. We don't need to change that by do any more to that because we've not times the bottom by anything. But we've times this y by 4 to get 4y, meaning I'll need to do the same to the top to get 4 on the top of our fraction. Because our denominators are now the same, we can go ahead and add, so 7 plus 4 all over 4y, and then we can just answer that to get 11 over 4y. So well done if you got that. Okay, example 5. Again, getting that a little bit trickier. 1 over 3y add 3 over 2y squared. Okay, so we've got a squared term on the bottom of our fraction now. I'm still thinking we need to find a common denominator. That's the only way we can add these fractions. So how can I make these denominators the same? If you've got a number term here, we obviously need to make these two numbers the same as well. So to do that, I'm thinking of the 3 in my 2 times table. What's the lowest common multiple between 3 and 2? Well, it's going to be 6. So 6 is going to be the number on the bottom of our fraction. And then I can change this y into y squared by timesing it by y. So the bottom of our fraction, we're going to have 6y squared. So I've looked at the number terms and thought, well, what's the lowest common multiple between 3 and 2? Well, I can change that to become 6. And because we've got y squared, I can change this y to become y squared just by timesing it by y. So now we need to calculate our numerators. And how have we changed this 3y to become 6y squared? Well, I've times the 3 by 2 to get the 6, and I've times the y by y to get the y squared, so I've times it all by 2y. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top to get 2y. And now, how have I changed this 2y squared to become 6y squared? Well, I've times it by 3, so whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do it to the top to get 9. And because our denominators are the same, we can just go ahead and add to get 2y plus 9 all over 6y squared. And that's that fully simplified, and that's our final answer. So using this example, really carefully following all the steps, can you try this question for yourself? So if you pause here and try this one. Okay, so let's go through the answer for this. We need to find our common denominators. Okay, so you should have 10x squared on the bottom of both your fractions. So to get to this point, I've thought about my number terms first. So 5 and 2, what's the lowest common multiple between 5 and 2? It's going to be 10. And then I can change this x to become x squared by timesing by x. So that means on the bottom of our fraction, we're going to have 10x squared. How have I changed this 5 to become 10x squared? I've times the 5 by 2 to get 10, and I've times it by x, so I've times them both by 2x. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do it to the top to get 6x on top of the first fraction. Then 2x squared, how have I changed that to become 10x squared? Well, I've times it by 5, so I'll need to do that to the top as well to get 5 over 10x squared. And because I've got the same denominators, we just go ahead and add them. So your final answer should be 6x plus 5 all over 10x squared. So again, really well done if you got that correct. So again, I would like you to try these 4 questions. So pause the video here and give these questions a go. Okay, hopefully you managed to give them a go and you've unpaused now. So first answer, you should have 4b plus 5a over ab. For b, you should have 21d subtract 2c all over 3cd. And then for c, you should have 17 over 3c. And for d, 5x subtract 4 all over 2x squared. So well done if you've really think you've managed with those questions.